All right, so welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into a day that, well, let's just say it's going to have historians scratching their heads for quite a while. January 20th, 2025, the day Trump made his grand return to the White House. Second term, yeah, but not exactly your typical second term. I mean, especially after losing in 2020, this comeback. It's definitely something else. And we've got a whole mountain of articles here from all over the place. We've got NBC, People, even Yahoo News chiming in. They're all breaking down the inauguration and, well, what Trump did with his first 24 hours back in the driver's seat.
You know, what really strikes me is how Trump is setting the stage for this term. And all this golden age talk, even mentioning putting the American flag on Mars, pretty ambitious, right? It's not really giving off those typical second term vibes, the whole let's just wrap things up kind of feeling.
Yeah, for sure. It's like he's trying to project this image of, I don't know, strength, progress. Almost like he's trying to make everyone forget about the last 4 years. And he definitely didn't waste any time putting his plans into action, that's for sure. That executive order signing spree was, wow, something else. Remain in Mexico is back, national emergency declared at the border, and now drug cartels are officially labeled as terrorist organizations.
And that's just the beginning. We've also got ending birthright citizenship, pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement, again, a freeze on federal hiring, mandatory in-person work for federal employees. Oh, and let's not forget, defining gender strictly as male or female. It's a lot to take in, that's for sure. And some of these moves, especially that birthright citizenship thing, those are going to face some serious legal challenges right out of the gate.
Hold on, can you break that down a bit? Why is ending birthright citizenship such a big legal deal?
Well, birthright citizenship, it's the whole idea that anyone born on U.S. soil automatically becomes a citizen, right? Yeah. And that's actually enshrined in the 14th Amendment. It's like a core part of our legal system. So just challenging that. It's basically setting the stage for a massive legal battle. And frankly, it's not even clear if he can actually overturn that with just an executive order. So yeah, keep an eye on the courts because this is going to be a long one for sure.
Wow. It's like he's hitting the reset button on the whole system.
Okay.
And speaking of shaking things up, let's talk about those January 6th pardons. Over 1,500 people, just like that, pardoned. All convicted of crimes related to the Capitol attack. It's a massive move, and it's causing a lot of controversy.
Yeah, and this pardon includes people who were convicted of assaulting police officers, even some folks involved in those planned attempts to overturn the election results. It really raises some serious questions about, well, accountability, the rule of law, the whole thing. I mean, there's this quote from a former officer who was actually injured during the attack, and he's asking, this is what the American people voted for. It really makes you think about the message this is sending.
It's a pretty stark contrast to what his own Vice President, J.D. Vance, was saying just a few days before the inauguration. Vance was pretty clear that those who took part in the violence should be held accountable, not pardoned. It makes you wonder if there's some kind of disagreement going on within the administration.
It's definitely a point of tension, no doubt about that, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the coming months. But let's switch gears for a moment, shall we? Talk about another surprise, the whole TikTok saga.
Oh, yeah, the TikTok roller coaster, that's for sure. Back in 2020, Trump was all set to ban the app, right? There was even a law passed that said it had to be sold off or banned completely. But then, right before the inauguration, he does a complete 180.
Yeah, not only did he delay the ban, but he's now proposing that the U.S. government takes a 50% ownership stake in TikTok. It's a huge shift from his previous stance, that's for sure. And it brings up all sorts of questions about, the government's role in social media and all that.
Yeah, I mean, this is unheard of, right? What happens legally, economically, if the government owns a chunk of a social media giant? What about data privacy, freedom of speech? Is this even legal?
Those are all great questions. And honestly, we need a lot more information to really grasp what this means for the future of social media, maybe even the internet as a whole. It's definitely something we're going to keep a close eye on.
Speaking of things to watch, remember all that tension between Trump and the tech giants during his first term? Well, this time around, it looks like they've decided to bury the hatchet.
It was quite the sight seeing Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and Jeff Bezos right there at the inauguration, front and center. Remember back in 2016 when Musk said Trump wasn't the right guy?
Oh, yeah, I remember that. And now he's co-leading the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE as they're calling it. What do you make of this sudden change in the relationship between Trump and big tech?
It's definitely an interesting development. It seems like there's been a major realignment of interests, that's for sure. Maybe it's just pragmatism, tech companies realizing they need to work with the administration to get the policies they want. But there are some deeper questions here.
Deeper questions like, is this a sign of some kind of deeper ideological alignment that we haven't fully grasped yet? What does this mean for the future of tech regulation, data privacy, even freedom of speech?
Exactly. These are the questions we're going to be exploring as we dig deeper into what Trump's return to power really means.
We've seen a ton of activity, haven't we, in just the first 24 hours of Trump's second term. Executive orders, pardons that have left people speechless, and this, well, seemingly friendly relationship with those tech giants. What does it all mean? What's the takeaway here?
You know, one thing that really jumped out at me from all the coverage is how Trump is framing his whole agenda this time around. It's all about this revolution of common sense. And getting back to, like, traditional values, it seems like he's trying to connect with a certain group of people, folks who feel like their voices haven't been heard, you know?
Yeah, I see that. There's this definite undercurrent of populism in his messaging, for sure. He's painting himself as the champion of the everyday American, the one who feels ignored by the elites and the woke mob.
Exactly. And by framing it this way, it allows him to present his policies, even the really controversial ones, as just simple common sense solutions, like his stance on gender, for instance, defining gender strictly as male or female. That aligns with a more traditional viewpoint. And he's betting that this will resonate with a good chunk of the population.
You know, this is interesting you bring that up, because one article I was reading pointed out that he immediately revoked a bunch of Biden's executive orders, especially those focused on expanding LGBTQ plus rights. It's like he's deliberately trying to undo a lot of the progress made in recent years.
It's a pretty clear signal that he's going to reverse course on a whole range of social and cultural issues. And this common sense rhetoric, it also extends to his approach on immigration, declaring a national emergency at the border that lets him bypass Congress and move funds towards building the wall and deploying troops.
Right, that was a major part of his campaign platform. And it seems like he's really doubling down on those promises. But isn't that kind of risky, though? I mean, bypassing Congress like that, doesn't that set a dangerous precedent for future presidents?
It's definitely controversial, there's no doubt about that. His supporters, they see it as taking decisive action. But his critics, they see it as an abuse of power. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out legally and how Congress reacts to this, this assertion of executive authority.
And what about his promise to end birthright citizenship? That seems like a long shot, considering it's part of the 14th Amendment.
Oh, it's going to be a huge legal battle, that's for sure. The 14th Amendment is pretty clear on this issue, but Trump seems determined to challenge how it's been interpreted. He argues that it encourages illegal immigration and that it needs to change.
But how can he actually make that happen? Changing the Constitution? That's a long and difficult process.
He's hoping to pressure Congress to start the amendment process, but realistically, it's unlikely to get enough support to actually pass. It's probably more of a symbolic gesture, something to appease his base.
So it seems like a lot of these moves are aimed at appealing to his core supporters, even if they're unlikely to actually work in the long run. It's all part of this narrative he's building, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's a narrative that resonates with a lot of people who feel like the country's headed in the wrong direction. They see Trump as someone who's willing to shake things up, to fight for their interests, even if it means bending the rules or breaking them.
Okay, so let's talk about something that's definitely bending the rules, if not breaking them completely. Those tech CEOs at the inauguration, Musk, Zuckerberg, Bezos, they were all there, front row seats, smiling for the cameras.
Yeah.
What a difference from all the hostility we saw during Trump's first term.
Right. It's a complete turnaround. And it's not just that they were there, it's what they're actually doing. Musk is co-leading DOGE, Zuckerberg's dismantling those fact-checking partnerships on Facebook. Bezos even donated to Trump's inauguration fund. It all suggests that we're entering a new era of cooperation between big tech and the administration.
But what's behind this sudden shift? Is it just pragmatism? Realizing they need to be on good terms with the president to avoid regulations they don't like.
That's definitely part of it, I'd say. But some analysts are starting to think that there might be a deeper ideological alignment going on here.
What do you mean by that?
Well, think about it. Musk and Trump, they both have this disdain for government bureaucracy, and they both believe in American exceptionalism. They both see technological innovation as the answer to a lot of the world's problems, and they both have this history of using social media to bypass traditional media outlets and connect directly with their followers.
It's like they're speaking the same language, even if their personalities are totally different.
Exactly. And this alignment of interests, it could have major consequences for how technology is regulated, how information spreads, even how our society functions as a whole.
It's a little unsettling, to be honest. It's like they're forming this powerful alliance that could reshape the entire digital landscape in ways we haven't even begun to imagine. So we've covered a ton of ground, haven't we? Trump's back in the White House. He's got this common sense revolution going. We talked about those pardons and, of course, that new friendship he seems to have struck up with big tech. But now, let's look ahead, shall we? What could be the fallout from all of this?
Well, I think the most pressing concern is just how much and how fast Trump is trying to change things. It's creating this feeling of whiplash, uncertainty, not just here in the U.S., but internationally, too.
Yeah, it's like we're all strapped into this roller coaster, took a sharp turn, and no one knows what's coming next. Where do you see the biggest potential for things to, well, blow up?
For one, those legal challenges to his executive orders, those are going to be fierce. Like ending birthright citizenship. That's practically guaranteed to end up in the Supreme Court, and that could take years to settle.
So we could be in for a long period of legal battles, uncertainty, with major policies just hanging in a balance while the courts decide. What about the economy? Trump's all about protectionist trade policies, those tariffs on Mexico and China. That's got to have some ripple effects globally, right?
Absolutely. Trade wars, they rarely have winners, you know? These tariffs, they could lead to higher prices for everyone, job losses in certain industries, even retaliation from other countries. It's a risky move, that's for sure. And whether it'll actually help the American economy in the long run, well, that remains to be seen.
And then there's a whole TikTok thing. The U.S. government owning part of a social media platform that's never been done before, and it raises a lot of red flags, doesn't it?
Oh, it's a can of worms, for sure. Concerns about censorship, government surveillance, using data for political gain, it's all there. And it sets a dangerous precedent for other countries to follow. We could see a fragmented internet, a much more controlled online environment globally.
It's like we're headed towards this new era of, I don't know, digital authoritarianism. Governments having more and more control over what we see and do online. And this alliance between Trump and big tech, well, that just makes those concerns even bigger.
Exactly. If tech companies are getting cozy with the administration just to get the regulations they want, it could mean sacrificing user privacy, data security. We have to be really careful, make sure these companies don't become tools for government control, whether they mean to or not.
It's a scary thought, isn't it? We're talking about a fundamental shift in power, not just to the U.S., but globally. And it's happening so fast, it's hard to even process it all.
That's the challenge we face in times like these, right?
Yeah.
We need to stay informed, think critically, and hold our leaders accountable. We can't just sit back and let these changes happen without thinking about the consequences down the line.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed, powerless, when you see such massive shifts happening. What would you say to our listeners who are trying to make sense of all this, figure out what they can do?
Well, first of all, don't give up. Don't despair. Your voice matters. That's the important thing. Stay informed, read different sources, have those tough conversations with people who see things differently than you do. Support organizations that are fighting for our rights, our democratic values, a more just and equal society for everyone.
It's a call to action, right? We can't just watch as the world changes around us. We have to be involved, help shape the future we want.
Exactly. This is a pivotal moment, no doubt about it. The choices we make now, they're going to have a huge impact for generations to come. We can't take that lightly.
Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into Trump's second first day.
Yeah.
What a ride, huh?
Yeah.
And it feels like we're just at the beginning of a very long and uncertain journey.
Absolutely. But remember, even when things are uncertain, knowledge is power. We're going to keep digging into these issues, bring you more insights as things develop. Stay curious, stay engaged, and stay hopeful.
Thanks for joining us on this Deep Docs, everyone. We'll be back soon with more explorations into, well, everything that's going on in our crazy world.